periodontium, as you know, is a complex tissue. We have the specialty, periodontology, dealing with these areas, and the periodontium have different parts. For example, the gingiva, the cementum, and the periodontal ligaments, and the surrounding bone, the lamina dura. And we will talk about today. We will talk about the gingiva and the surrounding periodontal sulcus, okay, or gingival sulcus, and the content of the gingival sulcus. So inside the periodontium we have this content, the cementum, periodontal ligament, as I mentioned you, and the lamina dura, the surrounding bone of the socket, and you should know the developmental connection here. You know, the gingiva is different because the gingiva is developing from ectodermally, from the oral mucosa, while the others mesodermal in origin, and from the follicle. Different parts of the follicle, as you know, the cementum is from the inner part. Cementoblasts are differentiating, which will produce the cementum layer, and the middle part from the periodontal ligament, from the fibroblasts, and the lamina dura is a bony tissue, so osteoblasts will form this area. And in healthy normal situation, around the neck we have the gingival sulcus, and we have an attachment level of the gingiva and of the periodontium. And this attachment normally in a healthy young person is under crown, so near the cervico-enamel junction, near the cervix, near the cement and the enamel, but under enamel. But in older persons, in the attachment, the junctional attachment is migrating to the apex. Sometimes you have disorders, diseases of the periodontium, so periodontal disorders, gingivitis, and periodontal bone loss may cause gingival migration to the apex, and the whole attachment of the tissues is weakened by this. So normally we have here above the bony level, this is the free gingiva, and between the sulcular side of the free gingiva, there is the sulcular epithelium, and between this sulcular epithelium and the enamel we have the sulcus, which is actually not a real space, but because there is a virtual gap between the inner side of the gingiva and the outer side of the tooth or the enamel, or sometimes, as I mentioned you, the cementum is forming the inner side of the sulcus. So this is the area, crevice or gingival sulcus, where a very gingivally and periodontally important fluid is producing, and this is the clavicular fluid or gingival sulcus fluid. GCF is producing here into this area, and it is very important to preserve the health of the gingiva, because this may contain some antimicrobial agents, either cellular or non-cellular agents we have in this fluid, and in this fluid we'll wash away from the sulcus and from the vicinity of the tissues, the bacterial content, and will clean the area. So it is very important. And after or under this layer, so below we have the attachment of the epithelium. So the epithelial attachment, which is very important clinically again, and you have to measure this gingival sulcus depth because when you have pockets, gingival pockets, you know the gingival pockets may cause tissue destruction and periodontitis. And you can see here the tissues and the different areas of the gingiva. The free gingiva is around the neck, of course, and attached the gingiva to the bone layer, and the alveolar mucosa is above the junction between the attached gingiva and the mucosa. Mucogingival junction, this mucogingival junction is clear here because this is more keratinized. So you have here mechanical irritation, of course, mechanical stress and biological, chemical stress from the bacteria. You have
in
here.
that gingival is prone to mechanical.
Attached. We have the mechanical stress here, and this is why the surface of the gingiva is keratinized here. You know, we have keratinized level here, non-keratinized, keratinized, non-keratinized, and below this epithelium, the mucosa, we have vessels inside, and this may cause the color differences. So the keratin layer, because of the mechanical stress, and plus the subepithelial vessels may cause the differences. As you can see here, the attachment is more strictly bonded to the underlying bone, because below this there is only the bone membrane or connective tissue, but here it is more loose. It is more loose, and of course we have the marginal gingiva, just this color, 2 millimeters, and we have the interdental gingiva or interdental papilla layer. These are the areas we should know anatomically. And of course we have discoloration. Normal physiologic discoloration is caused by the melanocytes in the epithelium. You know, the melanocytes can produce pigment, dark pigment, and the activity of the melanocytes could be different between the different nations. So it could be normally different. It depends on the activity of this epithelial and subepithelial cells, the melanocytes. And the interdental gingiva is very important in healthy situation, because we have here the core area. This core area is very sensitive to initiation of the periodontal lesions, because in this core area the epithelium is very weak. So we don't have strong epithelium between these, as a covering, as an upper layer. The uppermost layer of the gingiva is very sensitive, because you may know this saddle area. So we have the oral papilla and we have the vestibular papilla, and between them there is the core area, and the epithelium is nearly missing here, and this is why the periodontal lesions, the periodontitis, the inflammations forming or starting usually between teeth, and usually the interdental health and the interdental cleaning and is inefficient in most of the patients. Inefficient because interdentally you may need special devices, of course, interdental brushes and flosses, and even sometimes special flosses, super floss we need to clean the interdental area. So this area, this gingiva below the contact point fills the space in young persons, but in older persons there will be a gap because of the retraction of the gingiva, and when you have a gap and space, the bacteria can accumulate there easily and plaque will forming there fastly, and it is very difficult to clean because it is a very little gap. You can clean this outer surface, inner surface relatively easily with the brush, but this little gap, when it is formed once, later it is very difficult to clean, and sometimes you have feelings, approximal feelings, and the feeling marginal integrity is not good, and the plaque may accumulate more easily. This interdental gingiva could be pyramidal in shape, but could be saddle in shape, or this core area is forming in the posterior region. So in anterior region it is triangular, but it is saddle shaped in the posterior region with two papillae, with oral papillae and with vestibular papillae, and between them there is the core area, as I mentioned you, and different epithelial linings we have here. So we have the junctional epithelium. This is a multi-layered flat cells from 4 to 20 cell layers, epithelial cells. We have keratinocytes. We have here attaching with basal membrane to the tooth surface and to the underlying connective tissue. So we can an external membrane. We can have an external membrane toward the tooth surface, and internal membrane toward the connective tissue. And in connection with the sulcus, we have this non-keratinized epithelium. So of course this is non-keratinized flat cell epithelium. This is non-keratinized multi-layered epithelium. We have different four layers we have here, and we have a keratinized layer as the oral epithelium. So 3 different types of epithelium: oral epithelium keratinized, and sulcus epithelium non-keratinized layer, and the junctional epithelium is flat cell multi-layered epithelial junction.
Can you repeat again which one is multi-layer? Again?
These cells, the junctional epithelium, are forming this epithelium. This is a multi-layer flat cell epithelium. We have 4 to 20 layers flat keratinocyte epithelium here, and basal membrane can be found on both sides. Okay, so between 2 lines, basal membrane, we have this multi-layered epithelium here, but here we don't have basal membrane, of course, the outer basal membrane in the sulcular epithelium, but it is just a non-keratinized multi-layered epithelium. But here there is a keratin toward or facing to the oral cavity, and this free gingiva is above the bone level. Above the bone level, of course, this is the alveolar process. Of course, the crest of the alveolar process, and we have here the inner cortical plate, the outer cortical plate of the alveolar process, bony process. We have here, and we have the epithelial lining, and we have a subepithelial tissue, which is a firm connective tissue in the gingiva. So in the gingiva, in the marginal gingiva and attached gingiva, we have firm connective tissue, but in the oral mucosa we have loose connective tissue under the epithelium, with vessels. But here there are no vessels, only the collagen and the extracellular matrix and cells, but no significant vessel content here, only capillary. And the gingival sulcus, as I mentioned, this is a virtual space between the tooth surface and the sulcus epithel, the free gingival epithel, inner epithel of the free gingival, and normally it is around 2 millimeters in healthy situation, but this is a histological finding, but clinically you can measure the sulcus depth. As I mentioned you, it is an indicator of gingival problems and periodontal problems. So we have a probe, of course, and periodontal probe. We have to insert into the sulcus, and when it is the depth is higher than 3 millimeters, it could be clinically significant, and it could be pathological. You know, when you have the bleeding reaction and very deep pockets, there could be inflammation there. Because in the depths of the pockets, anaerobic bacteria may grow. Okay, in the depths of the pockets, you cannot clean pockets with normal cleaning and methods, you know, with brushing methods. The brushing is only efficient in 3-4 millimeters, but not more. Not more. You cannot clean more than 4 millimeters. When you have these deep pockets, the professional intervention is needed to clean. This is why we need the periodontologist to improve the oral hygiene, because deep pockets simply cannot be cleaned by you, by the patient, but we need professional dentists to clean deep pockets. So the pocket depth and the gingival sulcus depth is very important. You need these physiologically, these two parameters for the histological depth and clinical depth with probing. Okay, and between the sulcus epithel and the surface, we have the sulcus field with gingival fluid, clavicular fluid, and as I mentioned you, it is forming continuously, and it is a very important defensive human body fluid.
So clinically, if it's more than 3 millimeters, that's a problem.
Yes, it is.
Normally it's 1.8. It could be 2 to 3, but
1.8 is histological. You know, this is it is just theoretical.
oh, the clinical is the one that we check.
That is theoretically important, but it's not for the dentist, okay, but for you, in theoretical exam point, it would be important, because it is an important thing, you know. So when you introduce the probe, you may damage the epithelial attachment. This means, so with probing, you should take care, because you can insert the probe into the deeper tissues, and maybe you can cause the infection even with this probing method. So this is the probing. When you have a normal situation, the tissue are firm, and you cannot insert more than 3 millimeters into the pocket or the sulcus. But when you have loose, inflamed situation, in inflammation, of course, the more bleeding and swollen and loose tissues we have here, and the pocket depth is deeper. So this is the in periodontitis. So in problematic situations, in inflammation, periodontitis, we have deeper pockets, as you can see here. And the fluid, the GCF, gingival clavicular fluid, is some say it is a or mainly they say it is a transudate. So transudate means it is forming continuously with osmosis. So it is transferring from the blood vessels to the extracellular space and to the tissues, forming from the plasma, okay, from the peripheral blood. So the source of this tissue is the peripheral blood, and normally it is formed continuously, but sometimes when we have pathological situations, so in inflammation, its formation is increased, accelerated. It is increased because in an inflamed situation, when you have inflammation, the vessels are dilated and we have more porous, so less firm vessel walls, and the exudation is increased from the vessels to the tissues, to the extracellular spaces. And you can collect and you can evaluate, you can measure the clavicular fluid content, because we have some materials, so this test could be important clinically. When you measure the fluid and when you evaluate the fluid, it is a real laboratory test, like a blood test, okay? Blood test. Of course, it is not very well spread, or it is not very popular, and we need special laboratory background, but evaluation of the clavicular fluid would be important even from general health of the patient, because just an example, we have here the glucose concentration, and in diabetes the glucose concentration is changed, so it could be marker for general health problems. So you can collect fluid, and you can measure the amount of the fluid, because in normal situation it is produced less gingival fluid is produced in healthy normal situation, but when you have inflamed gingival tissues, the production of the gingival clavicular fluid is increased significantly, and the content is changed, because transudate is different than exudate. So the content, the protein content is different, because in transudate less protein we have, but in exudate, because of the more porous vessel walls, more blood and plasma proteins will appear in the gingival sulcus. In the gingival sulcus, when you have an inflammation, it will become a transudate. And in periodontitis, so periodontitis, of course, means inflammation of the periodontal tissues and destruction of the periodontal tissues, bony tissues, and the epithelial attachment level is disrupted. In periodontitis, the amount and the composition of the gingival fluid is changed.
More protein? The chemical composition change, you mean more proteins?
Or even iron content is changed, iron content, okay? Because the ions are very important again. For example, you have the calcium inside, calcium content, and in blood you have less calcium than in clavicular fluid, and when you have high calcium level, the calculus formation is increased, of course. So inflammation, calculus formation is increased, so the tartar or dental calculus is and plaque is forming more extensively when you have large calcium content, because for the classification, of course, we need minerals, but other minerals is changed as well. And you can see here inflammation, here large overgrowth, abscess formation, like you know the in case of apulis is similar. So in clinical inflammation, you can see here the more even the level of the gingiva, the formation, the excessive formation of the fluid all around the margin. You will see the lot of, and you know as I mentioned you, normally it is a transudate. So we have the vessels, and from the vessels, the plasma, part of the plasma is passing to the extracellular space. So it is an exudate, and in normal situation, the lymphatic vessels will transfer the produced fluid. So we have here fluid extravasation from the vessels, but this part of this fluid is transferred by the lymphatic vessels of the connective tissue. But when you have extra amount of fluid production, for example in inflammation, this lymphatic capacity is not enough to clear the area from the fluid, and this fluid will appear, will migrating through the extracellular tissue and through the epithelial lining to the sulcus, and will appear in the sulcus. So this is the reason why in inflamed situation, in inflammation, the gingival clavicular fluid is increased. You can see here bacteria and plaque, even subgingivally. You can find plaque under, even in the sulcus or on the surface of the tooth. And this will serve as a biological stimulus, will increase the exudate production from the capillary vessels. And these exudates will not be transferred away from the lymphatic systems, so the production is increased. And you can see here the functions of the GCF, cleans of the sulcus, as I mentioned you. So we wash away the bacteria and byproducts and other harmful subjects. And we have, of course, protein content which will serve as a defensive tool, and we have protein content which close the gap between the sulcus and the tooth surface. When the gingival integrity is normal, the gap is closed between the tooth and the sulcular epithelium, and when a real gap is formed, so the attachment is loose between the gingiva and tooth, the periodontitis is accelerating, and there is more chance for the tissue destruction when you have a loose connection between the epithelium and the tooth surface. And of course, antibody activity, antimicrobial properties, because we have cellular, for example, macrophages, T cells, we have inside, and polymorphonuclear cells, especially we have here in the sulcus, but we have antibodies, IgG, IgA, and we have IgM as well here. In the but IgG is the most important. As you know, we have here IgA as well, like in the saliva. As you know, from the saliva we have a special salivary IgA, IgA. But in this sulcus, different from the blood serum IgA we have, so it is different because plasma cells will produce the IgA molecules, but in the duct cells, as you know, when it is passing through the duct cells, in salivary IgA, the special subgroup is connecting to the IgA molecule, but here it is missing this.
So IgA is not found in the sulcus?
Yes, we have, but not salivary.
Not salivary IgA?
But serum. IgA we have, but different IgA. And not that G component, We have this molecule, the IgA is a dimer. And between this dimer, we have a G component. It is formed in the duct, salivary duct as well, and it is more resistant to enzymatic processes in the saliva. So it is, but it is this IgA, serum IgA in the sulcus, not in the saliva. So there is no need to extra production. And we have here, and GCS production, when we don't have inflammation, you can see here the amount of the production. GCS, it is different in different areas, in posterior areas between proximal surfaces, between molars, the production is the highest production is seen in molar region and in proximal area. And in the anterior region, it is produced, less is produced. Less is produced, but the production is depending from difference. Even vigorous or extensive brushing or any stress, or of course hormonal changes may change this production as well. And mainly the inflammation, as I mentioned. You have different components inside. We have cell component, epithelial cells, shedding the epithelial cells, so the uppermost layers could be eliminated this way. So epithelial cell layer, neutrophils or polymorphonuclear leukocytes. This is the most important. PMN leukocytes are the most important component. Nearly 90% of cells are neutrophils inside. And we have leukocytes then and other mononuclear cells inside. And of course we have bacterial content. I mentioned you have plaque here, subgingival plaque, and we have free subgingival plaque, so in the fluid, and we have attached to the tooth surface and attached to the epithelial surface in the sulcus. In the sulcus we have different kind of plaque, and we have organic materials as well, proteins, enzymes, and other molecules, interleukins could be important in bone morphological changes and in bone metabolism. There are some molecules which will dissolve the bone, okay? So destroy the bone can cause some bone destruction, and there are some interleukins may protect the bone. And we have bacterial byproducts as well, And inorganic materials are important. I reflected that calcium could be important as well, but natrium, sodium level is important. Calcium, potassium level is higher in tissue destruction. Okay, tissue destruction. So the inside the sulcus, the natrium or sodium content is lower, but potassium and calcium is higher than in the plasma. You know, and plasmid is important here. And I mentioned you that glucose concentration is characteristic in the sulcus, and it is 3-4 times higher than the concentration of the glucose in the serum. So it is important and would be clinically relevant to measure, to evaluate the glucose level in the sulcus. And of course, the concentration of the glucose is changed and even the tissues GCM production is changed in diabetes. So you know the diabetic patients are very sensitive to periodontal changes. So the periodontal destruction could be very extensive in diabetic persons, 3 times more sensitive than normal persons, or more, 3 times more, or even more. And smokers are very sensitive to periodontitis as well.
Because they have less glucose in the GC than normal.
It is just findings, you know, but I don't think this is the reason. But the reason could be the cell function, okay? Because in the neutrophil function is different. In smokers, you know, in smokers and in diabetic persons, the lazy leukocytes you may have
less number of leukocytes in the
you know, it is so the leukocyte function and activity is different. So they say that there is a lazy leukocyte effect. Sometimes, you know, lazy. It is a diagnostic phenomenon. It is an lipopolysaccharide. It is an endotoxin, a bacterial byproduct, bacterial byproducts. Lipopolysaccharide. Okay. So we will continue with